Welcome. Today we're taking a close look at a film that, for so many people, really is a core childhood memory. The 1971 musical Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal here isn't just to go over the story of Charlie and the Golden Ticket, because we assume you know that part pretty well.
Right.
We want to get into the really incredible and sometimes just plain bizarre story of how it was made, the origins, the creative battles, the production itself, and how it left this massive cultural footprint that's still with us.
That's absolutely it. We're looking at a film that, well, it's kind of a paradox. It was born from a purely commercial idea, a business plan, but somehow it transcended all of that to become this, recognized cultural treasure.
And the sources we have are pretty incredible. We've got original production notes. We have recollections from the cast, especially the actors who were kids at the time.
And we also have these detailed histories of its release, which was famously not a success at first, and then its eventual huge comeback.
So just to set the stage for you, the movie's about Charlie Bucket, a 12-year-old paperboy, very poor family, and he wins one of 5 golden tickets.
Right. And that context, his poverty, his innocence, it's so important because the whole reason the film got made in the first place had nothing to do with art or imagination. It was all about business.
Okay, let's start right there. With that surprising origin, the initial idea, the spark, it actually came from a really personal place.
It did. It came from director Mel Stewart's daughter, Madeline, who was 10 years old. She read Roald Dahl's book, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and she just went to her dad and said, "You should make this into a movie."
A simple request.
Yeah.
But that personal moment was, well, it was almost immediately swallowed up by a massive corporate plan that ended up paying for the whole thing.
What's so fascinating is just how blatant that corporate plan was. The Quaker Oats Company bought the rights to the book.
Quaker Oats, the oatmeal company.
The very same. They bought the rights and put up most of the money for one single reason. It was an explicit commercial goal to promote a brand new line of candy bars from their new subsidiary, Breaker Confections.
Which later became the Willy Wonka Candy Company.
Exactly.
So this film, this beloved classic, was essentially a 90-minute-long commercial. The entire point was product placement for a Wonka bar.
100%. It wasn't just a side project. It was the whole point. And that's the first big irony, right? You have this movie that's a critique of greed and consumerism. It has this strong moral center.
And it's financed by the ultimate act of consumerism.
Precisely. Quaker Oats was literally betting that the movie's success would make their new Wonka brand an instant household name. They wanted to create this direct line in your mind, from the fantasy on screen to the candy on the shelf.
Okay, so let's bring in the author himself, Roald Dahl. He's credited on the screenplay, but the finished movie, it was a huge disappointment for him. He famously disowned it.
He did, and that's one of the most painful parts of the film's whole legacy. Even the credit he got is complicated.
How so?
Well, he was supposed to write the whole screenplay, but our sources say he only delivered a pretty rough outline before production really got going, so they had to bring someone else in.
And that was David Seltzer.
Yes, who went on to be a very successful writer and director. He was brought in for this huge, uncredited rewrite, and the producer, David Wolper, actually promised Seltzer his next directing gig just to get it done.
Why? Why not just give Seltzer the credit?
Because they were desperate to keep Dahl's name on the script. He was the brand, the owner of the intellectual property. They needed his name for credibility, even as he was leaving the project over all these creative differences.
So wait, they're using Roald Dahl's name to sell the film while he's publicly criticizing the very artistic choices they're making.
It's the perfect parallel, isn't it? It mirrors the themes of corporate deception and illusion that are happening inside the factory in the story.
The tension must have been immense. What were Dahl's specific problems with it?
He had a few big ones. First, he felt the movie put way too much emphasis on Willy Wonka. For Dahl, the story was about Charlie. It was Charlie's moral journey.
But the film shifted the focus to the eccentric Candyman.
Exactly, and that fundamentally changed the narrative for him. His second big problem was, well, it was the music.
He didn't like the songs.
He hated them.
Yeah.
The score by Leslie Bricusse and Anthony Newley. He used words like saccharine, sappy, and sentimental, just visceral dislike.
He thought it made the story too soft.
Yes, he felt it took away the dark, unsettling edge that he believed was essential to his original vision. He didn't want a light, happy children's musical.
And then there was the casting of Wonka himself. Gene Wilder was not his choice.
Not at all. Dahl was adamant that the surreal British comedian Spike Milligan should have played the part.
Spike Milligan. That would have been a very different movie.
A completely different movie. If you think about Milligan's comedy, it's absurdist, it's unpredictable, it's much darker. It tells you that Dahl imagined a Wonka who was far less in control, maybe more openly chaotic, than the sort of elegant, contained madness that Wilder delivered.
So it wasn't just about which actor was better, it was about the entire tone of the character.
Absolutely. And beyond Dahl's personal issues, the screenplay made another huge change. It completely reworked the villain, Slugworth.
Right, in the book, he's a pretty minor character, isn't he? Just a rival candy maker.
A very minor, shadowy figure, but David Seltzer, the screenwriter, he transformed him into a spy. An imposter, really, who was secretly working for Wonka.
So he was planted there to test the children.
Exactly. His whole purpose was to approach each kid and tempt them, to offer them money to betray Wonka and steal the secret of the everlasting gobstopper.
Which gives the whole story this overarching tension. It's all a moral test.
And it makes that final scene in Wonka's office so much more powerful. When Wonka explodes in anger and says Charlie gets nothing, it's not random. It's the final part of the test that Slugworth started at the very beginning.
Now, we have to talk about one of the most layered and, frankly, controversial parts of the whole production, the title change. It wasn't called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
No, it became Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah.
And the reasons for this change are, well, there are a few of them, and they're all pretty revealing.
There was the official studio reason, of course.
Right. The publicity department put out the line that the title was changed to put emphasis on the eccentric central character of Willy Wonka. The artistic reason.
Which, is plausible. Wilder's performance is magnetic. But the producer, David Wolper, he had a much more bottom-line explanation.
He was very blunt about it. He said he changed the title to create a stronger, more direct link to the product they were launching. The Wonka Bar. Simple as that.
So the title itself was a marketing tool.
For him it was. The title needed to sell the candy, not just the movie. And that decision, you can imagine, just infuriated Roald Dahl even more.
But then there's this other, much more complicated social context for the change. It had to do with the politics of the time.
It did, and this is really surprising. During that era, the late 60s, early 70s, the term Mr. Charlie was being used in the African-American community as a derogatory term for a white man in power, a boss figure.
And there was another meaning for Charlie, too, right?
Yes. At the same time, during the Vietnam War, U.S. soldiers were using the name Charlie as a dismissive term for the Viet Cong.
That's an incredible intersection of social and political language to hit a children's film. The studio must have been really worried about those associations.
They were very sensitive to it. Director Mel Stewart even confirmed that some African-American actors had raised the issue. So while he defended the change as being about Wonka, he acknowledged this external pressure.
And that awareness, that sensitivity, it connects directly to another major change they made, this one about the Oompa Loompas.
It does, because protest groups, including the NAACP, had already raised serious issues with how the Oompa Loompas were depicted in Dahl's original book.
What was the original depiction?
In the 1964 edition, they were described as African pygmies who Wonka had brought to his factory from the deepest and darkest part of the African jungle to work for cocoa beans.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It drew immediate and strong criticism. Groups compared it to slavery or, at best, indentured servitude. It was a very serious charge that the filmmakers had to deal with before they could even start shooting.
So how did they solve it?
Mel Stewart insisted on a total visual reinvention. He was the one who suggested they become the characters we know today with the orange skin and the green hair.
So that iconic look was specifically designed to remove any real-world racial association.
Completely. The green hair, the orange skin, the stylized white eyebrows, it was all created to make them purely fantastical, to sidestep the controversy from Dahl's book entirely.
Let's move on to the casting, because that's really the heart of why this film has lasted so long. The search for Willy Wonka was intense. Gene Wilder was far from the only name in the running.
Not at all. The list is incredible. We know that all 6 members of Monty Python expressed interest.
That would have been something.
And of course, we mentioned Roald Dahl's choice, Spike Milligan. But our sources also confirm Peter Sellers literally begged Dahl for the part. Joel Grey was also a serious contender for a while.
And there was one other name, a true Hollywood legend, that was also in the mix.
Fred Astaire. He was 72 at the time, so maybe not realistic for the physical demands of the role, but there was real interest there.
But in the end, it all came down to Wilder's audition at the Plaza Hotel in New York.
Yes, and the moment he walked in, both Stewart and the producer David Wolper knew their search was over. Wolper said the role fit him tighter than one of Jacques Cousteau's wetsuits.
What was it about him?
For Stewart, it was all in his eyes. He said Wilder had this humor in his eyes, but also this sardonic, demonic edge. He saw both the kindness and the potential for cruelty. Stewart was so convinced he apparently ran out into the hallway after Wilder left and offered him the part on the spot.
But Wilder accepted on one very specific, non-negotiable condition. And this has become the stuff of movie legend.
It's maybe the single most important character decision in the whole film.
Oh.
He insisted that for his first entrance, when he meets the children, he had to do something very particular.
The limp.
The limp. He would walk out with a cane, limping heavily. Then the cane would get stuck in a cobblestone and he'd keep walking without it, stumble. And just before he falls, he'd do a beautiful forward somersault, pop back up, and the crowd would cheer.
And when the director asked him why he wanted to do that,
Wilder's answer defined the entire character. He said, "From that time on, no one will know if I'm lying or telling the truth."
he said he wouldn't take the role otherwise.
He was adamant. That one single moment of performance vulnerability, followed by sudden, perfect physical control, it establishes the total ambiguity of Wonka. You never quite trust him after that.
That somersault really does set the psychological tone for everything that follows. What about the rest of the cast? The kids?
Well, most of the child actors had some prior experience in school plays or commercials, but the casting for Augustus Gloop was very different.
That was Michael Bullner.
Yes. He was discovered in Germany, and he was chosen almost entirely because, as the sources say, he was rotund. Stewart basically just saw him and knew he had the look. It was a purely physical casting choice.
And the Oompa Loompas were a truly international group.
They were. They hired 10 actors of short stature from all over. They came from France, Germany, Malta, Turkey, Iran, and the UK. It really added to that feeling that the factory was in this kind of ambiguous, non-specific place.
There's also a great story about a major star who almost had a small part in the film.
A huge star. Sammy Davis Jr. desperately wanted to play Bill, the candy shop owner, the one who sings the Candyman.
Why didn't he get it?
Director Mel Stewart felt that having a star of that magnitude in such a small, humble role would break the reality of the scene. It would pull you out of the movie, so he said no.
Which is incredibly ironic given what happened next.
The irony is huge. Sammy Davis Jr. went and recorded the Candyman himself right after the film came out.
And it became his only #1 hit.
His only #1. It spent 3 weeks at the top of the Billboard charts, so Stewart made a choice for artistic realism, and in doing so, missed having a legend in his film, only for that legend to have his biggest musical success because of the song from that film.
So let's talk about building the factory itself. The filming was all done in Munich, West Germany. Why there?
Well, the main reason was financial. It was just significantly cheaper to shoot there than in the U.S., but Mel Stewart also really liked the location because it felt, a bit unfamiliar, ambiguous. He didn't want the town to feel like it was in Ohio or England. He wanted it to be nowhere and everywhere.
And some of the locations were real industrial sites.
Yes, the exterior of the factory was the city gasworks in Munich, a real gritty industrial building. And that final scene when the Wonka Vader is flying over the town, that's actually footage of a real Bavarian town called Nördlingen.
Inside the factory, the production design was key to showing Wonka's eccentric mind. The inventing room especially went through a big change.
It did. The first designs were apparently very boring, just an industrial room. Stewart hated it. He wanted a wacky, chaotic laboratory full of what he called Rube Goldberg mechanisms.
Things that look complicated, but do simple tasks.
Or do nothing at all. He wanted it to reflect Wonka's genius and his madness. So the set designers literally went out and scoured junkyards and bakeries all over Munich for old pipes, funnels, and machine parts to build that set.
And that eccentricity carried right through to the end, to Wonka's office.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Stewart gave the designer one very specific instruction for the office. Everything in it, except for the light bulbs, had to be cut in half. The desk, the chair, the coat rack, everything. He said he couldn't stand the idea of this magical journey ending in a boring, normal office. The half props gave the room this surreal, off-balance feeling, which perfectly reflected Wonka's own fractured personality.
Okay, we have to talk about the props, especially the food. The chocolate room is this childhood fantasy, but the reality was a little less delicious.
A lot less delicious. Only about a third of what you see in that room was actually edible.
What was real?
Things like the giant mushrooms were filled with real whipped cream. The teacup that Wonka bites into was made of wax, so Gene Wilder would chew on it during the take and then spit it out afterwards.
And the wallpaper that snozberries tastes like snozberries.
Not actually flavored. The giant gummy bears were plastic, so a lot of it was just visual illusion.
And the most iconic part of that room, the chocolate river. That was the worst of all.
By all accounts, it was pretty grim. Paris Themin, who played Mike Teavee, said it was just water with food coloring. But Michael Bollner, Augustus Gloop, who actually fell into it, he described it as dirty, stinking water. Apparently, the hot studio lights made it smell awful, and they had to keep adding chemicals to it, but it was still cold and unpleasant the whole time.
There's another great budget-saving detail from the scene in Mr. Salt's factory where all the workers are unwrapping Wonka bars.
Yes, that mountain of chocolate bars they're going through, they're all made of wood, just painted blocks of wood. It was much, much cheaper than using thousands of real chocolate bars for take after take.
This brings us to how Mel Stewart directed the actors, especially the children. He used some, let's say, method techniques to get real reactions.
He was a big believer in capturing genuine surprise. So for instance, when Wonka does his big entrance, the limp and the somersault, the child actors had no idea it was coming.
So their shocked reactions are completely real.
Totally authentic. And he did the same thing with the chocolate room. The kids were forbidden from seeing the set until the moment the cameras were rolling and they walked in for the first time.
So that look of pure wonder on Charlie's face.
That's a real little boy seeing that incredible set for the very first time. It's a brilliant piece of directing.
The one exception was Julie Dawn Cole, Veruca Salt, right?
Right. The designer apparently gave her a little sneak peek. The theory is that since her character was supposed to be unimpressed and spoiled, a look of genuine wonder wasn't as critical for her performance.
But the most famous example of this technique is probably the tunnel boat ride.
Oh, that scene is a masterclass in creating genuine fear. The actors were not warned about how unsettling it was going to be. The flashing lights, the creepy images, and Gene Wilder's performance getting more and more frantic as he recites that poem.
Their looks of terror are real.
They are. The goal was to make them uncomfortable, and it worked. It's why that scene is still cited as one of the scariest moments in any children's film.
And he used that same technique for the final confrontation in the office.
He did. The scene where Wonka explodes at Charlie, they rehearsed it very calmly. But when they filmed it, Wilder, on Stewart's instruction, unleashed this torrent of genuine anger.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
Exactly. And the shock and hurt you see on Charlie's and Grandpa Joe's faces, that was real. They had no idea he was going to come at them with that level of intensity.
We also have a story about how demanding the shoot could be for the kids.
Julie Dawn Cole's song, I Want It Now, took 36 takes to get right. And they filmed it on her 13th birthday.
36 takes. Wow.
And on the other side of that, we have a story from Gene Wilder about one of the kids being a bit of a handful.
This would be Paris Themin, Mike Teavee.
Yes. Wilder called him a little brat and a troublemaker. He told a story about how, on the set with the 3-course meal gum machine, Themin opened up a prop beehive and let the bees out. And he got stung. A perfect real-life moral lesson for the kid playing the misbehaving child.
It's so strange to think about now, but when this movie was released, it was not a hit. It was close to being a financial flop.
It's really hard to believe, but it's true. It came out on June 30, 1971. The budget was about $3 million, and in its first run, it only made about $4 million worldwide. It barely broke even.
And the critics were completely split on it.
Totally divided. On one hand, you had Roger Ebert, who gave it a perfect 4 stars. He called it probably the best film of its sort since The Wizard of Oz. A genuine work of imagination.
But other really big critics just hated it.
Howard Thompson from the New York Times called it tedious and stagey with little sparkle. And Gene Siskel famously said the Chocolate River looked too much like the Chicago River to be appealing. He thought the whole thing looked cheap.
But despite the box office and the mixed reviews, it did get some awards recognition.
It did. Gene Wilder got a Golden Globe nomination for his performance, which was absolutely deserved. And the score, the one Roald Dahl hated so much, actually got an Oscar nomination.
So how did this initial flop become the absolute cultural icon it is today?
The story of the distribution rights is really the key.
It's everything. In 1977, the original distribution deal with Paramount Pictures expired. And Paramount just let it go. They didn't think it was worth renewing.
They thought the film was dead. They did. So the rights went back to the original financier, Quaker Oats, who wanted out of the movie business, and they sold the rights to Warner Bros. For just $500,000.
A bargain.
An incredible bargain. And that sale to Warner Bros. Happened at the perfect time, right as television reruns and the home video market were exploding.
The VCR.
The VCR. The film's second life and its real legacy was built on repeated TV broadcasts in the 70s and then VHS tapes in the 80s. An entire generation of kids discovered it at home, not in the theater.
And even those early TV airings were a big deal.
Huge. In 1975, a football game ran into overtime, and NBC cut the first 40 minutes of the movie. There was a massive viewer backlash. It showed that even then, a dedicated, passionate audience was forming around it.
You mentioned the tunnel scene earlier as being a key part of its cult status.
Absolutely. It's consistently ranked as one of the scariest movie moments for a reason. Bravo put it on their list. It really seared itself into the minds of a generation of kids.
There was also a scene that was cut from the film that Mills Stewart always regretted losing.
Yes, he said it was his favorite scene. It involved an explorer who climbs a mountain to ask a guru the meaning of life.
And what does the guru say?
The guru asks for a Wonka bar. He opens it, sees there's no golden ticket inside, and then delivers his wisdom. Life is a disappointment.
That is fantastically dark. Why was it cut?
Because test audiences didn't get it. They didn't laugh. A psychologist friend told Stewart, "For a lot of people, life is a disappointment. You're telling a joke, but they believe the punchline." It was just too bleak, too honest for what was supposed to be a family film.
So decades later, after all this, the film gets the ultimate recognition.
The highest honor, really. In 2014, the Library of Congress selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry.
Which means it's officially designated as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
It's the final step in that incredible journey, from a candy commercial to a protected piece of American art.
And the music, which Dahl hated, also has this incredible legacy.
Especially the Candyman. We talked about Sammy Davis Jr.'s version. It became a massive hit, which ensured that at least part of the score would live on forever, separate from the film itself. Though I think today, Pure Imagination is probably the song most people associate with the movie's soul.
But the film's biggest impact today might be in all the parodies and homages we see everywhere.
It's constant. The whole setup, the tour of a magical factory, the moral tests, it's become cultural shorthand. You see it parodied on Saturday Night Live, The Office, The Simpsons.
Futurama did a whole episode, Fry and the Slurm Factory.
A direct homage. And it's not just comedy. The imagery has shown up in music videos, too.
Marilyn Manson's video for Dope Hat.
Heavily influenced by the boat ride scene.
Yeah.
And the band Alien Ant Farm, dressed up as Oompa Loompas for their video for movies, it's just woven into pop culture.
The film even found a new life online in the 2010s.
Yes, through an internet meme. A still of Gene Wilder's face became the condescending Wonka meme.
Right. Tell me more about.
Exactly. It's amazing that his very specific performance of controlled, elegant cynicism could be captured in a single frame and become a global digital joke decades later.
And the physical props from the film are now worth a fortune.
Which is the ultimate irony. In 2017, an original Everlasting Gobstopper and a Wonka bar prop sold for $105,000 on the show Pawn Stars. From cheap set dressing for a commercial to a six-figure collectible.
And we even see its influence today in recent films like the 2023 origin story, Wonka.
We do. That film made a point of using the 1971 movie's designs, especially for the Oompa Loompas, that orange and green look. And it heavily featured the song Pure Imagination. It acknowledged that the 1971 film is still the definitive version.
So when you look back at its whole history, it's really an amazing story of transformation.
It is. You have a film that was financed to sell candy, a film its own author detested, it faced creative battles, it was a financial disappointment at first, and yet it fought its way back through television and home video to become this beloved, protected piece of cultural history.
It's remarkable. Which brings us all the way back to Gene Wilder's demand about his entrance. That insistence that the somersault was there, so no one would ever know if Wonka was lying or telling the truth.
That permanent ambiguity.
Exactly. So what does it mean that this film, a story built around a character whose truthfulness is always in question, a factory built on illusion and tests? What does it mean that this is the film we preserved as historically significant? What does that tell us about the role of ambiguity, of moral uncertainty, in a classic that lasts forever?
That's something to think about. Thanks for listening.